Evet, hepiniz tekrar hoş geldiniz. Bugünkü üçüncü
Hi,
oturumumuzda
welcome once again.
yaratıcı direktörü Can Oral bizimle olacak.
Today, John Oral, the
Can da
creative
yaratıcı
director,
direktörlük
is going to
rolleri ve
be with us.
neler
He is going to
yapacağını
be talking
bize
about
anlatacak.
responsibilities, implementations, and threats of being a technical director, the design director in that respect. Now, I would like to give the floor to
Hoş
him.
geldiniz Can Bey.
Hi,
Bugün
Can Bey. Hi.
nasılsınız? İyisinizdir
How are
umarım.
you? I hope you're
Sağlığınız
doing
yerinde.
good.
İyiyim
Yes.
ben. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Fantastic. What about you?
Teşekkürler.
Yes, we're also doing great. Thank you very much for your participation. So, if you are ready, you can start sharing your screen. Yes, first of all, I would like to thank everybody for your attendance, and I would like to welcome you.
Konumuza geçelim. Muhabbetimizi konu esnasında yapalım istiyorum. Şu soruları da bir kenara alalım. Evet arkadaşlar, tekrar hoş geldiniz.
Friends, welcome.
Bugün ben size biraz
Well, today,
içine düştüğüm yaratıcı yönetmen
I will be talking about this creative director position, which I am in on at the moment. What kind of responsibilities does it have, and what kind of a journey does it take in order to pursue this profession? I would like to talk about these topics. Well, in general, my presentations, I deliver them in English. However, being able to speak in Turkish, especially this kind of content information is not shared that much in our own language. That's why I will be proceeding in Turkish. I will deliver my presentation in Turkish, but we will have English simultaneous interpretation. If you've got questions, you can also share them in both languages. So after I complete my presentation, I most probably assume that I will start receiving questions, but in order for this to be kind of a direct, organic kind of chit chat conversation, you can chip in and ask questions anytime you like, because I'm used to actually during my lecturing sessions. It could be even better for me if you could just chip in. And this webinar system is really good because with your pajamas on, you're able to attend a conversation from your home. So it has its own kind of beauty, I guess, and comfortability. Actually, this was a template of another presentation of mine, which I will be sharing with you right now. And the background was the background of that presentation. After I prepared the content, I was just had made an attempt to change the visuals, but the visual that I saw here really attracted me. This Voltron here, analogy, which is used, is indeed kind of a thing, a metaphor that represents my profession, my mission, because for a team to act in tune healthily, or else acting them as a single body and serving for a single vision. And I take this profession of mine as a profession as such that actually keeps the team in tune. That's why I just wanted to keep that Voltron visual here. So now let's go into the depths of this definition.
Şimdi öncelikle
So first of all,
çok pardon, özür diliyorum. Demin
excuse me,
duymuyordum
but
aslında
I mean,
çeviriyi.
actually, I was not hearing the interpretation.
Şu an
But
duyabiliyorum.
now I am able to hear.
Evet, şimdi hemen onu bir ufak sıkıntı oldu. Hemen onu hallediyoruz.
Hiç
Kusura
problem
bakmayın
yok. Bu arada
tekrar.
çevirmen hanım da gerçekten hızlıymış yani. Benim tanımladığım problemi de çevirdi anında. Ağzına sağlık.
Şu an düzelmiş olması gerekiyor. Devam edebilirsiniz. Kusura bakmayın
Tabii ki.
tekrar.
Estağfurullah. Evet, yani bu işin tam bir tanımı var mı? Tanımı ne? Hani benim kendi kişisel öyküme gelmeden biraz hani bu meseleye eğilelim istedim. Bir şey kapatıyor. Şunu şöyle yapalım. Hem evet hem hayır aslında bu sorunun cevabı.
Question. Well,
Yani en temelinde ve teorisinde evet.
well, in the very theory of it, the basics of it, yes.
Aynı bir film yönetmeni gibi
Because just like a film director,
vizyonunun
a defined vision of a game
koruyucusu ve
should be
şekillendiricisi.
protected and should be shaped, and which needs a director actually. That is what a creative director does. But at the same time, no, it doesn't have a specific job description because each creative director has their own style. Well, a person coming from the software background, for instance, would display a different kind of creative directorship. On the other hand, a person with a design background would have a different perception. For instance, talking about myself, I come from the cinema movie background. As most probably, I have the attributes of movie backgrounds, and some would like to have full command of everything. Some may have more artistic features. Some only takes care of the big pictures, and
Yol arkadaşlarını ya da takım liderlerini mesela daha
for instance,
fazla bir kreatif yaratıcı alan içerisinde bırakabilir.
would maybe keep their team members in more of a creative realm. So according to me, eventually, as a result,
Genç ve rollerin
really young
tanımlarının çok hızla değiştiği bir
and the role definitions really change in this very gaming industry. So not only about creative director, but in terms of, for instance, author definition, some, for instance, seek for narrative designers, some writers, some like quest designer, for instance. Besides your writing qualifications, you should also have like game qualifications. I mean, different companies do have different job descriptions and have different expectations from those jobs. And in this respect, a creative director from sometimes they concentrate on teamwork and sometimes a single individual creative mindset. And of course, when it comes to the gaming sector, the creative director definition changes, friends. It varies. For instance, in some games, a lead designer could actually be could act as a creative director, or as you could like come up with a role called game director. More or less, it is the responsibility similar to creative directors. However, some games, their values is derived from their creative directors directly. So let me just give a few examples. Of course, there are more people as creative directors in the gaming sector, but still there are people who merge the past and the future when it comes to creative directors. These are important names like Sid Meier, for instance. He is the creative director, the person behind Civilization Gaming. Sid Meier, of course, with the game Civilization, I mean, it wasn't the only game that paved the way for Sid Meier. When we look at the movies, for instance, like in the 80s, Pirates covered Ops, if I'm not mistaken, or else Sword of the Samurai, for instance, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, in his very own realm, he had a specific vision at the time, and he undertook many projects accordingly. And in the modern industry, he became a visionary person, a visionary name. Peter Molin, for instance, again, another name that comes to my mind from the Black and White series, had its own unique gaming design. Its language and also his approach is unique to himself. Of course, there is Kojima, another creative director that crosses our minds. And actually, they started in the 1980s and then into 1990s, and currently they are still active. And then there's also Ken Levin, BioJack, System Shock. He's the person behind those games, and Tim Schafer, Chris Avellano, Lights of Fallout, New Vegas. I think that in New Vegas, another person was working. I mean, these roles, when we think of people who have undertaken the creative director role, some authors, we call them author directors in the movie sector. I mean, the movies carry the DNA of that very director. We use the terminology author for those people. So this is actually a concept which could be brought along for the gaming sector, for instance, talking about Hojima. I mean, the next Metal Gear game, I mean, but instead of waiting for the Metal Gear, people wait for the next Hojima game, actually. It has become a phenomenon. And the whole production runs over a single name, thanks to Kojima. So I mean, we see their repeated tendencies, their areas of interest when we view their games. And finally, when explaining this job, or else when explaining what kind of a difference could a creative director bring in, I would like to say that the previous experiences of a creative director, not only limited to the gaming projects that she has undertaken, but how he has entered into the sector, or else in the past, what kind of other disciplines was she involved in, actually determines the style of his creative directorship. For instance, when it comes to visual arts, if a person has been involved in visual arts in the past, and who has entered into this gaming sector through visual arts, for instance. This person could be a cinematic artist, for instance, in the past, you name it. This actually defines the creative directorship that she undertakes. For instance, Chris Metzen, actually is a 2D artist and an animation artist, indeed, in Blizzard. And onwards, he narrated certain stories of games, and there were really important games like Warcraft 3 is one of them, for instance. He has designed it. And I'm sure that their own concepts, worlds, their game ideas, when they were explaining it, he has done a lot of drawings, and like similar to a arts director, I'm sure he has been behaving, approaching to the game. Well, after summarizing my general thoughts about this very job, this position, I would like to now more individualize this topic, in the sense that, I mean, these roles and areas of interest and how they have been executed do vary from one person to another. So how do I undertake this job? What was I involved in the past? And then what like triggered me to switch to this profession, to this industry? I would like to talk about myself in that respect. Well, what was I doing in the past? I was involved in cinema, and even though people think that there are two different sectors, the audio, visual, and aspects of cinema, I benefited a lot in the gaming sector. And then I was also doing plotting, for instance. I was shooting visual projects and I was plotting them. And I had printed short stories, comics, and as much as time could permit. Of course, besides directorship, I was a scenarist for a long time. And I was the drummist of a music group. I was a musician, and I was also a drummist in various actually music bands, and I was also involved in electronic music. All of them which seem to be independent from each other throughout my career, um, contributed to me when I was involved in the gaming industry. I mean, all of my areas of interest in the past actually were experiences that prepared me for this very gaming experience. That is what I think from time to time, because uh, really you have to bring in totally different disciplines together when you generate a game. So the more, especially of course concerning my position, the more you are knowledgeable about different topics, the more you are involved in the background of many topics and you've been involved and undertaking jobs in that respect, the more you benefit from them, you interpret them in your inner world, and then you share them with the other professionals who are involved in certain projects. This enables your capability to communicate your thoughts and ideas with your team members. It's not that I have left all what I've done in the past behind and I have entered into a totally different realm. No, that is not the case actually. All what I was involved in the past, now I am using it more in the gaming industry when I direct games. Because in the past, for instance, a scenario was written and then the scenario writing process is over and then pre-production, post-production processes come and then posing and then post-production. So here now in the gaming sector, uh, this game is a structure that breathes, that lives, and every week I have to write something new and I have to direct those scenes, and these carries on for years on end. So instead of leaving the past behind, actually I am using those skills which I've acquired from the past more, and I mean my skills here have disciplines me when it comes to being a creative director of a game now. And also, as you see, I used to think that I used to do a lot, but now I am currently doing all what I have done in the past plus more. So, of course, this needs not be like this. I mean, because almost all this needn't be a structure that urges me to fight with all different aspects, but in Turkey, I was able to undertake games which were not actually uh, uh, exist in within the country, and I urge others to get involved. And those games require know-how based on retrospective years and also requires skills and knowledge. And it's a giant industry. So not only me, but here, for instance, I've written fucking everything, but actually all my team members, I'm sure that they do this. Um, these sectors, pool talent is really limited. And a game studio like us has to do many things at the same time, like a jack of all trades. This goes the same for all my team members. And in that respect, I have to touch more than one thing as the definition of my job. So I have to take care of many more things. That is how I can explain the very situation that I'm in now. And also, uh, in indie game creation, a desktop RPG game, for instance, just like those multi-classes, that is the kind of team members that I seek. Instead of like me doing one silo, he doing another silo, she do another one. I want those people to be compatible, to be competent in more than one areas, so that in the future, if if we face a challenge to pull through, or else if somebody has to take that extra mile, uh, I want to have the right team members to take that extra mile when it is required. So this creative directorship, what I do within this position, well, some of those things that I do are the things that other creative directors across the world do, but some only me individually, I undertake those things. Here I have listed them.
yöntemlerim olarak görebilirsiniz. Özellikle aşağıda,
Especially
aşağı satırlara doğru olanlarda.
the lower ranked items on the list are the things that I do myself individually. But a creative director, as I have underlined, is a person that is in full command of the vision. He owns the vision of the game. I mean, more than anybody else. He has played that game in his mind and he has felt that dream, and he, she, or else has dwelled on how his team members understand that dream and has started taking the early steps in order to realize that dream in his mind, like via writing a vision document. And throughout the process, actually, this continues. I mean, it's not that you write a design document in the very first place and then the whole game actually runs smoothly based on that initial design document. That is not the case. I mean, you always have to evolve that design document. I'm sure that, as you all know, I mean, it's like a two-step forward, one step backwards. If you're lucky, if you're not lucky, you go one step forward, two steps backwards. So certain operations till the very early design stage, you have to go backwards, take backward steps. So these documents important, and what is important here is to be able to realize that dream in your mind with a design document, mock-ups, all the physical methods, so as to say, in order to realize that dream in your mind is utilized by a creative director. So now, again, maybe this is something that I do uniquely, only me, because I am also a producer. I also seek for the talent in order to execute the project. That is one of my main responsibilities, according to me, as a creative director. For instance, staging 2D and 1920s, like book illustration. It is based on that. So in Turkey, I sought for talents with a artistic background that was able to understand the 1920s traits and Stygian. I mean, many stages of Stygian. I interviewed many people, and with another game of mine, more or less, again, of course, I sought for talent in order to execute this very project. I had new team members on the team. So I am highly involved in the production side of the game. Well, actually, I do the production myself. And in this respect, I am thinking of taking certain steps in the near future, maybe like with via production assistance, in order to have production assistants with me. But beyond that, the production that you generate also has an output. I mean, you give briefs, you prepare documents, sometimes physically you explain that world, you discuss it, and then everybody actually breathes a common universe actually, and you create such a universe or else a design, a world, you name it, a mechanic approach. However, one of the most pleasurable aspects of this job is that there are different individuals that breathe the same universe, and they also spend the endeavors. And when things go well, a visual artist comes up with ideas you never have anticipated before, and tops up the cake with her own ideas, which creates some magic actually. And you see that the world that you're dreaming actually becomes much more interesting with their contributing ideas. But sometimes, of course, the approach, their approach is We like do reinterpretations, revisions to the game. We have to go there, and sometimes, because not everything runs smoothly, sometimes ideas, executions go astray, and you have to get back them on track by revising the processes in your project. So what I do is that people, team members, when commenting on their job, the things that they create, they come up with, I use a direct language with by giving justifications to what I say. For instance, there is this a character, excuse me, which is emerged, and it is too stylized, the proportions of that character. Maybe it's more like a Disney kind of a creature, it seems like. But the game has to preserve a certain personification. I say, okay, the proportions are good, but it's more like too animatic. This is a horror or as a fear scene, for instance. So let's like do it like this, twist it like that. So I kind of give a rational, I establish a rational communication with the team member in order to lead him, her properly, so that she stays in tune with the general spirit of the game. So my personal approach, even though this may seem like my personal approach with CGN and Cats and Other Lives, I mean, in those games, what happened was that that game dream that I had, I am the carrier of that dream in my mind. So I like not like the inventor or as a dominator, but I am a kind of, I transfer that dream. Once I fall in love with that dream, once I think that that dream could excite people, I become the slave of that dream. The more, just like I spend effort to realize that dream, I do believe that others in the team have to do the same. They have to spend that effort in order to realize that dream. So it's not that I, with a bird's eye, actually like kind of say, no, that isn't good. No, this doesn't suit. We kind of have a common dream, and we check out on what serves for that dream and what doesn't. That's why, I mean, when it comes to my creative directorship, I do not personalize things. I only serve the dream of the game, and I want others to do the same. I also do diplomacy. I could more probe on that during the Q&A, but in Turkey, I mean, doing such a job is not an easy work, because people actually they're not used to like working on a project that spans for many years, and it's a really challenging sector, and they have to resist for many years. They have to show patience, and people are not used to that. And hypervision, actually, it's not a coincidence that this is the most popular in Turkey, because this sector has no equivalent in the country. So the wages are not that competitive, and people have to work for many years. That's why it's a matter of passion. I have that passion. Of course, you have to have that passion. Actually, you have to always keep the flames uh, burning in order to run the project. But diplomacy is needed with different parties, different players, or else diplomacy within the team, and establishing, ensuring that cohesion within the team is really important in order to run the project. I think that that is my agenda item every week, sometimes only by observing the team, or sometimes by actively taking a step in order to harmonize the team is really important. Psychological support is what I do as a creative director as well. In regards to diplomacy, of course, I cooperate with other publishers and developers. I kind of have discussions with them about like legal arrangements, for instance, or else me and in order to protect and defend my own rights and my team members' rights, in order to advocate them. So it has a diplomatic and political aspect as well, this creative director job. A psychological support, yes. I mean, because I mean, we are living in today's Turkey, and I'm sure that uh, everybody has thought of needing a psychological support. So how the team feels and how well organized they work with each other, how motivated they are, or else how optimistic they are towards the future. Of course, these are all my agenda items to consider, and I also display guerrilla tactics, like how I can summarize these. Like because if you don't have sufficient resource, if you don't have sufficient time, sometimes if you don't have the necessary tools, then you have to have alternative routes, and you have to carry on with the fight with those alternative tactics. It's not only unique to games, but I think that in many other industries, this is the approach. I mean, doing more with less, or else abstracting things, showing me things more as in a symbolic manner, finding another tool and doing the right technical interventions, and instead of writing it from the scratch, adapting an already existing one in our game, and sometimes giving up on certain things totally, even though this is your core future. Uh, I mean, the health of the uh, for the health of the wholeness and for the outcome of the marathon, sometimes you have to take swift decisions and give up on certain things and draw a new road for yourself. These are the skills that you have to address when you're trying to survive. For the last 5 years, actually, I'm depending on these skills of mine. And I always explain this to my students. Uh, I'm sure that the developers would also here agree. 30% of what we do is entertaining, like creative design, arts, and all that uh, play areas where skills takes place, the magic takes place. The rest 70% is to do with problem solving. Of course, like this could be like technical hindrances that you encounter, you have to pull through them. There could be like social hindrances, time hindrances, economical hindrances, and most of those obstacles I actively take part in solving those obstacles, pulling through those obstacles. Sometimes it's only me that has to deal with those obstacles and to eliminate them. And sometimes, people work with passion and they are ambitious to reach to a certain levels. And I'm sure that if you're a creative director as such, you don't have even a single day without any problems. Well, apart from this creative direction, I do writing, authoring, arts management.
And lighting, a little bit production and voiceover. When there are some characters like monsters and madmen. So I have all of these titles, those tasks I carry out simultaneously. It doesn't mean that I do creative directing and also catch up with all the other, but these are all organically related to one another as tasks. And personally, it works for me to be that multidisciplinary, to have that multidisciplinary and multi-perspective approach. Because dealing with cinema and something else on the same day was a part of that period of my life. And I have been observing some challenges about specialization in our country. But what I saw was that if you spend too much time and have some deformation, go blind, and go to another field, then it opens up horizons for you. When it comes to writing, when I had too much of it, was fed up with that, I steered towards maybe coloring and setting coloring. That's why it maybe helped me along the way. And secondly, yes, you might be working with some other writers. And the best way to explain something to a writer is to write yourself. I was working with some other artists, and for the past a couple of months, I've been writing myself, and it can be a really rapid way of communication to come up with your own mockup.
Sorularımız açık. Nerede kaldık? Ya da işte aydınlatma üzerine
So about maybe lighting.
çalışırken bir objenin aslında daha
When
doğrusu
working on it,
orada nasıl bir default lightingle
deep of
gerçekleştiğini
lighting, for example,
konusunu konuşuyoruz.
in the phase of drawing,
Financing
you
production
can
şu anda
come up with
zaten
some
hala
ideas.
yaraların
And
altında.
financing, production, these are
Yani
some bleeding
üzerinde
wounds I have, if you
görüyoruz
will.
ve yani
So I don't
hayatın
believe
devamında
it's right to
daha
be
farklı
so
olanakları
much
görebiliyoruz.
scattered, and maybe
Yani kısacası
different
her şeyin
paths
karşılığı bir
should
silah.
be drawn along the way.
Staging
But
tasarımda
these
şu anda çok
were
bildiğimiz
all
tasarımların arasında
corresponding to
mümkün
something
olduğu kadar
specific. And when it comes to
segmentasyon
stringent and some others, I try to keep my critical distance to each and every one of them and follow the vision that I had in the beginning. This is what I try to pay attention to in the work
Şimdi
that I
buraya
do.
kadar
So far,
bir sorusu olan var mı bu görevlerle ilgili? Ya
is
da
there any question about these tasks?
açmamı isteyen, ilerletmemi
Or
isteyen
is
var
there
mı?
anyone who want me to go into further details about the things I addressed?
Peki.
Okay,
O zaman işi birazcık daha
so
farklı
maybe I
anlatayım.
can move to another
Aynı zamanda
aspect
Bahçeşehir Üniversitesi'nde
of it
çalışıyorum.
all.
Hoca
At
olarak
Bahçeşehir University,
e,
unexpectedly, I became a lecturer, and I have a lecture called Fundamentals of Game of Design 2.
aslında tabii ki
So, in that, while working with the students, of course, it is
iletişiminiz olabiliyor. Özellikle
more possible to have an organic
öğrenciler
communication with the students because they have less bias or prejudice as compared to you. They might have some bigger dreams. If it's right to say, they haven't felt still the strong slap of life on their faces,
baktığınızda
maybe.
onların da projelerine siz
So they have
rehberlik
some
yaparken
projects. When you guide them in their
şekilde
projects,
de e, yapma şeklinizi de sorgulayabiliyorsunuz. Çünkü
you might end up
gerçekten verdiğiniz
questioning your own way of
alt üstü geliyor mesela bir öğrenciden. Ve kendimle de ilgili
making your job.
öğrencilerimle
So
mesela bir şeyleri bana sormalarını
sometimes they make me question the way I express things
buraya
myself. That's
belli bir
why
insana ve
when it
öğrencilerin
comes to
proje
lecturing,
üretmelerini,
teaching,
projelerini
and coming up with some
tasarlamak
ideas, some
konusunda
extra ideas for the projects of the students or guiding the students,
çok farklı görmüyorum. Yani benim için
these are not
daha
that much difficult than creative directing.
verdiğim bir eğitim programı
They go
var.
hand in hand, and I also have started a project.
Yani bir sektör
It has been
farkındalığı
ongoing
oluşturmak
for 1.5 years almost. It
aynı
is
zamanda
bringing the
e,
sectoral, the
temin
industrial
edilen
professionals
ve finansal olarak
uh, together with
destek olan
students
yardım
and it is a graduation project where everyone is a partner in a game, and
çalışanlarına, e, profesyonel icracılara çevirecek ki
we are looking
e,
for ways to turn them into project
yani
professionals.
aslında misyonlarımdan bir tanesi de
So one of their
ben
missions,
davalarda bundan işte 4-5 yıl kadar önce yola çıktığımda ortada olan
when
bu
I
sorun
started this journey
bugün
about
hala
4 or 5 years ago,
bölümü okuyan insanlar tarafından bir noktada doldurup
we were looking for the
aynı
ways to
zamanda da
fill up the
profesyonel
gaps
olarak da aktararak
and share
gelecekte
the
kalkınacak
knowledge that I have had
çalışanlarına
professionally
uygun
and have a
geçmiş
transfer over generations
yaratabilmek diye düşünüyorum yani.
and to
Böyle
come up with the
insanlarla
right set of skills. This is what I
geçmiş
have
projeleri
as an effort. So the
hikayeleri
works, the
böyle
studies that I
insanlarla
have, and the
paylaşmak
projects that I do, it also all of those have such a purpose.
bir ekip nasıl kurulur?
There's a question how to
Kuralım
set
yani.
up a
Nasıl
reliable
olacağını gördüm.
and
Kendime yaklaşım anlatayım.
practical team.
Ya Osman aslında ya keşke net bir formülü olsa.
So I wish I had a clear formula for that, Osman.
Nelere dikkat etmeliyiz kısmında neyse o zaman başlayalım.
Maybe I should put it this way.
Bir kere bir insanın e, ne kadar güvenilir olduğu
First of all,
infodan zaten anlaşılamaz.
you
Ancak
cannot
süreç
quite
içerisinde
tell
ilerlediğinde
how reliable or trustworthy
bu
one
anlamda
person is
proaktif yaklaşan
with the first
uzun süre
impression you
sahip
get from someone
süreçlerin
or on
önemini
someone.
vermeyebilir. Dediğim gibi bu bir maraton. Yani kısa zamanlı
It's a marathon,
uzun zamanlı
so
uzun zamanlı görüşmeler
short term
her zaman
relations or
bunu
short term
belli standartlar
professionalism, short
koyabileceği
term
insanlar zaten
intentions
bunu
might not
sağlayabilir.
work, and
Zaman
in only a
her
certain
zaman
amount of time, it is
Amerika
possible.
Odası
Maybe
branşlardan
it's
bahsediyorum.
always a,
Endüstriyel
a
otomotiv
challenging process.
ürünü üreten en büyük firmalarda da bugün
Even at the giant firms of the world, this goes the same for the
artık
USA.
neredeyse abuse dayanan e, çalışma saatlerinden veya efordan bahsedilebilir.
People talk about,
Dolayısıyla
maybe we can talk about some working hours that can be even maybe of abuse. So it's a long, long process. It's
ekip
a
içerisinde
challenge, and it
tahammülsüzlük yapabilir
may not be
e,
possible for everyone
veya
to
öğrenme
endure that. But I guess this
sürecini
is related with the success
profesyonel
within the team and
anlamda
tendency to
biraz daha
learn,
önde tutuyorum Türkiye'de.
and it goes a
Çünkü
little beyond professional execution.
kısa bir şeyler yaptıktan sonra
Because after doing something
birkaç
very
insan
short
gerekiyor.
and coming up with a couple of
Gereksiz ego
projects and
olabiliyor.
portfolio,
Yani
people might grow some unnecessary ego,
bir insan bir iki
as
proje
there's
başlatsa
not a very
sonradan
big
bunu
pool. If some
sürdürülebilir
people do a
kabul
couple of
edilebilir
things
zaten
and people
o
can
insanlar
feel
haftada bir de birlikte
like they
hareket
are
eden
doing the
profesyonellerle
best, so it
temas
might not be that
halinde
easy to work
takım arkadaşlarıyla
towards the
bazıları
same vision
maalesef
with some people
takım
like
içi
that. But the
ilişkileri
people I have in my
böyle
team are the
zaten
people who learn along the way.
takımda
They have
olsa da
good
öğrenirken
communication
öğrenirken
skills. They
belirlerken
have respect to one another. So as I always have
benim
this mission along the way
ve bana çok
to learn
katkıları da
along the path, I have
ama
seen a
şunu da
lot of
anlayabiliyorum.
benefits to
Size
come from that.
bir
But of
ama
course, it is
aynı şeyi üçüncü kere, dördüncü kere yapacaksanız belli
possible to
noktada
understand. If you will do certain things a couple of times over and over again, then you are supposed to position people who have expertise, their portfolio, and their experience and expertise will be of great importance. That's why, in a professional position, if there are some who designed games, at least designed games with your tiers. If it's a PC game, a PC game is a casual game, then a casual game. So someone who took part all the way from the beginning till the end of a project should be positioned in some teams. Otherwise, they will not be fully grasping with whom they act. I don't know what kind of a game you design, but if it's a unique game, then it means that there's no expertise about that discipline. So illustration, for example, is something else, but creating assets for the game is another thing. It has other liabilities and it demands thinking within uh, borders. That's why it's a trial and error process. It's a process that develops, that improves a long time with some senses growing, socially strong, and it should be to do with choosing the people who have a trust also to others. I can suggest one more thing. Maybe you can start with the people around you, even if it's not the best option. Maybe you can start with some friends of yours uh, whose skills you trust. So working with friends always bears good and bad results, and it can lead to some positive and negative outcomes. But working with friends has another source of motivation, and maybe at least you can see that for long years you have shared the same world together. So this is maybe an advantage, but when it comes to the disadvantage, if there's something you have to apply some pressure or maybe decide only on professional basis, maybe that can hurt your friendship. So like the designing game itself, the practice of designing games itself, yes, you lose certain things along the path, and especially when the structure is established and when you put things on top of it. So after the structure is established and when you have to make some additional choices, and especially if you have to go back in time and decide retrospectively, you will need to be standing on a very fine line of balance. And this continues, I guess, that sensitivity. So another friend is willing to take the floor and ask the question
Şu
directly.
an ya el kaldırabilir ya da direkt Q&A kısmına
Well, they
yazabilir.
can
Şu an çünkü
raise the
göremiyorum.
raise hand or maybe type their questions in the Q&A box because I cannot see anybody who's raising their hands. Maybe I have already answered their question. So I guess I have. It was my pleasure, Osman. We will continue experiencing such things, but the more we do, the more well grounded things will be. And the years I have experienced, went through, showed me that. And let me ask to our moderator if we have some time. Actually, we are over time. We have a delay even we have a 3 minute maybe uh, delay. So if we are out of time, that's all I would like to share. I would like to thank you everyone, all the participants for their questions. Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question or do you want to ask a question? No. Thank you very much. We would like to thank you very much for your participation. See you next time.